comic books made more sense. You know it is fictitious without pretense.
Hello, today I'm going to take a look at a long-forgotten little title from 1993 to 94 from Marvel Comics, The Secret Defenders, which was going to be a relaunch of the Defenders franchise in the 90s. Defenders was a comic from the 70s, 80s, around there, where Doctor Strange assembled a team of like Hulk, Namor, Silver Surfer, like crazy super powered characters that no one could possibly fight when teamed up, and Valkyrie. And then the roster like switched around after that. That title lasted a pretty long time, and it has its very loyal fans. And then it ended. And in '93, around there, they decided to have a new team, the Secret Defenders. As you see here, it's a bunch of '90s characters here. There's the West Coast Avengers, Spider-Woman, Julia Carpenter, and then you've got Nomad, and of course Wolverine's front and center because you put him front and center in any cover and it sells back in those days. Doctor Strange, of course, here, and Darkhawk, who was a strange, curious character that debuted in his own comic all of a sudden with no fanfare. I bought them. And it's like a high school kid named Chris Powell that gets this armor, and he doesn't know what it is. And he has this little crystal that gives him this armor. He looks sort of like a dirt bike guy with a frickin' fancy helmet, right? So this was the Secret Defenders. I bought these because I found the stories more intriguing than they really had to be. It's pretty fun stuff. So let's get into it. This is a foil cover. Common at this time. It's very fancy schmancy, very bright. Now, the problem with these was that these were cardstock, and I found a lot of the time they didn't cut the cardstock correctly. As you can see, there's some page bleed here. It's shorter than the actual interiors. The back is the same way. Here's a Genie commercial, by the way. You see there's paper here, and it's longer than the actual cardstock itself. This happened a lot in those days with these fancy covers. They do these fancy things, but they weren't cut properly, right? So, anyhow, let's get into it. First, unbelievable issue. And back then, you launch a #1, and it's like a big seller, and then all the vendors, all the retailers would basically low order of issue 2, and then issue 2 becomes more valuable than issue 1 as a result. Here's an ad for Super Nintendo's Mystic Quest from Squaresoft. The 16-bit wars were in full swing at this point. Super Nintendo was pretty big. This says $39.99. I always got mad at these American commercials being published in Canadian comics. Comics that were sold in Canada, because that definitely was not the price. I mean, video games here were between $60 to $80 when a game came out. Back then, it was $80. I remember because I saved up for each one, so the ones I wanted. So here's Doctor Strange going through all these tarot cards, and some of them have the characters that he's going to assemble. So this was written by Roy Thomas, who inaugurated the original Defenders, and so he's inaugurating the Secret Defenders here. And the pencils are by Andre Coates. And yeah, this is basically he's creating a house of cards. It crumbles around him. He senses there's a danger in the multiverse. Say it with me now. And it all starts with a bank robbery that isn't what it appears. So here's these guys robbing a bank. You're going to see a lot of baseball card commercials in this comic. Sports cards were really big at this time. This is from Score. One thing I want to point out, this comic came out in 1993. So I live in Toronto. And in 92, the Jays won the pennant. They won the World Series. And they would go on to win the World Series in 93 as well. what team is not present here? It's like they have the Phillies, and John Kruk was a big, larger-than-life celebrity at this time in baseball. I mean, being a big slobby-looking dude. Um, and yeah, it's like there's no Jays to be mentioned here. So here's Nomad with his baby here. Now, this is not Steve Rogers. This is a different Nomad. And so he fights these guys. Now, Nomad's thing is that he's a former he was experimented on as a super soldier, but he left the government. And now he's a nomad. Like living up to his name. There's a T2 arcade for Genesis commercial. That's cool. I never played the Genesis version of this. I wasn't a Genesis kid, but it looks awesome. I mean, all we wanted was the arcade, right? The arcade was a gallery shooter. So you just you shoot stuff like this Terminator's doing right here, posing for you. So it's pretty cool. It's also available on Game Boy. That's awesome. So yes, they try to fight this guy, these robbers. At one point, he discovers that this person's a woman, but he says, "You're a girl, aren't you?" And she's like, "I got a bulletin for you, Charlie. We're called women now." So he punches Nomad, and then all of a sudden these guys get webbed up, and they're like, they're trying to get away in their car. Like, what gives? Well, it's Spider Woman, and I get confused between all of these Spider Women and their power sets. I think there's like 2 of them, but like it's I remember. I think it's the red and yellow one. Jessica Drew, I think, right? She can shoot like stuns or something, right? I can't remember. I do get confused between all those guys. Here comes Darkhawk. So they're all gathering here for some reason. They're in Phoenix. And Darkhawk has, he can fly. He can also, he's impervious to bullets and everything. They run into Wolverine, so Wolverine's here too. He blows smoke in this guy's face. And the guy gets a lick in. He punches Wolverine. And Wolverine compliments him by saying, "That hurt." And he's like, "It did," and he gets punched out. Here's the Joe Kubert School of Cartooning. That's cool. Joe Kubert, of course, is known for his anatomy drawing. Great with stuff like Tarzan and Tor. And here's a Boys Town National Hotline. I think this is more for like mental health and stress. They don't say that here, but they use the Hulk to illustrate we all must deal with the monster within. So, we each have our own anger and pain, and keeping it inside can do a lot of damage. So that's a nice little service for kids. I never called this, but it's cool to have in like a comic that's directly aimed at kids, right? And mainly boys. I know girls probably read this as well, but this is mostly a boys comic, right? So I know it's tough to say now, but like it is what it is. It was a target audience, right? We'll talk about this in a bit, but so they're gathering and stuff, and they find out that the cops don't even know they're there. They're invisible to them somehow, and they're like, "What the hell is this?" So the people drive off, and they're like, "Well, I mean, we were summoned here by Doctor Strange each, right?" So that's why they're all in Phoenix. This is, I don't know if this is an ad for, what is this an ad for? Like, you'll want to own the first, I guess it's VHS, as seen on Fox Kids. Nothing stops Marvel's X-Men. So I think X-Men debuted in like 92 or something like that. Was a huge hit instantly. And I knew back then, oh boy, this is going to be like Super Friends, in that like, as kids grew up with Super Friends, they wanted their Justice League comics to look like Super Friends, like have that roster. And that's kind of what happened with X-Men. People just want this roster, right? Because that's what they remember from their childhood. But yeah, Night of the Sentinels, I think, was the first episode, or maybe the first arc there, with Morph and everything. What I didn't like about this series was they sidelined Beast in the first season. He's like captured and he doesn't come back till the very end. And I was like, well, why'd they do that for? So here's Strange saying, you've all been summoned here. I used to have a team called Defenders. Here they are. There's Surfer, Valkyrie, Hulk, Namor, and Doctor Strange here. And it's like, I'm gonna do it again, with you guys. He senses that there's a problem in the multiverse, and this bank robbery has something to do with it. And here he is, backtracking and telling him how he summoned them all in their individual areas. Like Julia Carpenter is with her daughter here, and it's like, we don't care if the nice see-through man knows who we are without our masks on, do we, Rachel? And she's like, nope. Here's Wolverine watching Casablanca, and he's like, as soon as this is over. He wants to finish it, man. There's Nomad. So you have it, and then he's like, yeah, the Earth itself is at stake and everything, investigate this. This is a lot like a roleplay campaign, because he's like, well, I've summoned you all here. Go find out, like, I sense something's wrong, go find out what's wrong with this bank robbery. So now they have something to do. So they're gonna go, and they're going to the jail where they're all being held so far by the cops, and question the cops, and the cops like, they gave us ID, but it's all like fake names. And it's like, you don't believe they're really like Humphrey Clinker, Tobias Smollett, and Tabitha Bramble. And he's like, there's no ID on them. That's what they said they were. And so they're like, okay, let's go. There's a separate guy being held who's not talking at all. So they're going to go talk to that guy. And he's an old man. He was younger before. And they rip open this gate, and like, Nomad's like, why did Strange summon me if, all this muscle is here? It's like, you got like Spider-Woman and Darkhawk have super strength. They could just like, rip through these bars. So he's dead. They're going to perform CPR, but they can't now. And so Wolverine's like, let's call an instant wake. So they get all the other bank robbers in there to identify the body. And they're like, sorry, coppers. Never seen this stiff before in my life and everything. The woman is crying, and Spider-Woman's like, spill it, like, what did this man die of? And she's like, I don't know, I just, I'm shocked by seeing a dead body, right? But as they're leaving, she gives a little clue. She gives a little address here, and Spider-Woman's like, what? And then Wolverine's like, Klamath, red, and later on, Wolverine says, how long have you been with the Avengers? Because, oh wait, I think I skipped it. Yeah, he's like, how long have you been with the Avengers, lady? That girl tries to toss you a bone without her buddies hearing, and you nearly blow it. And she's like, yeah, you're right, I'm still learning and everything. Spider-Woman, I like this design of Spider-Woman. I do like the red and yellow, but this screams more of a spider character to me, with the eyes and everything, and this simple suit. And she'd go on to be in the Iron Man cartoon in the 90s, and that gave her own figure as well. And the figure is pretty cool as well, from the toy line. So they're investigating. She finds it odd that, like, Spider-Woman finds it odd that the characters are all from old British novels that, like, teenagers would probably not know. And the term copper is not something that, a teenager would know. So as a kid, you're reading this and you're like, well, they're older than they seem, right? The one guy probably aged to death because whatever it is wore out, right? Here's Mile High Comics, America's largest comics dealer, blah, 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 highly influential in the industry at the time. And here you've got, like, a list of, I guess, like, Marvel and DC stuff. It's mostly Marvel. There's some DC here. Valiant is moving in on territory now. Dark Horse Comics. They had their own universe, but also they had other stuff. Like Hellboy wasn't part of their universe and everything. And some of their movie stuff as well, licensed stuff. So they're investigating and stuff, and then Spider-Woman runs into something. You see a shadow of something here that she runs into. Let's take a pause and look at the Bullpen Bulletins. This is something that ran through Marvel Comics every month. They'd refresh it every month. There's a Stan soapbox. There's items that with upcoming product coming out. They used to have a profile, but they don't have that here. They have a little one-panel strip here. And on sale this week, which I always took a look at. And I have some old comics where I actually checked off boxes of stuff I got and circled boxes of stuff I wanted. But let's take a look at this. I found this interesting. Stan's Soapbox. This is 1993. So Stan wrote a little column for these things. I don't think there's any controversy as to whether or not he wrote these or they were ghost written. But here, this is the 30th anniversary of Marvel, as you see here. And here he writes a Marvel Reader's Bill of Rights. And with all the trouble that Marvel and DC are both in right now in terms of comic sales and antagonizing the audience, etc., I wanted to read this out because I find this really fascinating. This is the way that a past generation saw their readership and their customers and the industry as a whole. So this is the Marvel Reader's Bill of Rights preamble. All Marvelites are created equal. Your bullpen will never favor one group of readers over another. Therefore, each and every one of you is irrevocably granted these inalienable rights. So, let's read the rights. Number 1, the right to an unlimited variety of reading entertainment. Sure. Number 2, the right to carefully crafted stories that give you a fighting chance to understand what's going on when you plunk down your money. I find this fascinating because at the end of this, he says he anchors it to the fact that a customer doesn't have to buy your product, but they are putting down their hard-earned money for your product. So for that, in return, you should be able to be entertained and delighted by and understand the story, right, that you're buying. Number 3, the right to comment about every Marvel tale you read and to know that each of our editors values your opinion. Wow. And that was something that, like, your opinion should be respected, whether or not it's dissenting, Number 4, the right to buy only the titles that interest you and to shun any title that fails to entertain you, which nowadays is everything. Number 5, the right to fearlessly assemble in public to discuss Marvel's comics, characters, and creators. Okay, let's pause right there. 1993 was when the internet first became publicly available in a wide sense. It was around this time that people were just getting into creating websites, and very basic ones, right? There was no streaming anything, and video was super duper hard to load. And a lot of stuff was just like message boards and things. And people freely debated things on there. It was fine. Nowadays, there's all sorts of like boards and stuff like 4chan and whatnot, but also social media outlets, etc. And a lot of banning. There's little respect paid to the idea of free thought. When you have a dissenting opinion, it's ridiculed rather than debated, and you're banned for not agreeing with something. It's polarized instantly rather than talked through with human debate, So this was something that a previous generation thought was possible and should be done, just principle of it. And current generations that rule this sort of thing don't believe anymore. And if you don't believe me, just go on any site and say, state your opinion about Marvel comics or DC comics not catering to entertainment and superhero characters, etc. Or like why dwell on one social aspect of something, rather than the superhero fights a guy because I want escapism, right? Like, how about that? What happened to escapism? Number 6, the right to address all Marvel editors and creative people by their first names. 7, the right to be told what is currently happening in Marvel's mags and what is being planned for in the future. Number 8, the right to practice scripting and drawing our Marvel characters for your own pleasure and amusement. Number 9, the right to submit your best work to Marvel for consideration and know that the time and talent you have invested will be given the attention it deserves, because meritocracy was still kind of a thing back then. And 10, the right to expect Marvel always to maintain a dedication to quality, a commitment to decency, and a sense of humor about everything we do. Who does that not hold true now? They can't laugh at themselves at all, and everything. Marvel and DC both, and everything is a squabbly combat. Here is a bunch of items of stuff coming up. They're continuing Midnight Suns in some capacity. I didn't know there was a Marvel tour book. I had the DC ones. But yeah, I guess they published a tour book in the 90s. And there's some more about Sleepwalker. I think it's on issue 20 something at this point. That's an interesting series. Stuff about the 30th anniversary. Moon Knight's coming back for the umpteenth time. Fight Man, I don't know what that is. Fabian Nicieza. I think that's how you pronounce that name. I don't know. Some fun stuff here. Barbie 27. I didn't know it reached that high. Of course, I never read Barbie. But here it's like Barbie hunts a stolen pin, and Skipper confronts dognappers. They're Marvel's newest crime-fighting sensation. Yeah, Skipper, I think, was the younger sister of Barbie or something like that. Death's Head, Darkhold, I bought a lot of that. That's the book it's part of the Midnight Suns like spin-off, right? You have Ghost Rider, 35, Gru the Wanderer. Guardians of the Galaxy 34, it's the original roster, not the one from the movies. Charlie 27 isn't even in those movies. I think there might be a cameo or something, I don't know. Quasar 44. I jumped off Guardians and Quasar at this point. Ravage 29.9, number 4. I have a few Ravage 29.9. Savage Swords of Conan, still going strong in 1993. Secret Defenders we have here. Shadow Riders with Ghost Rider in it, of course. Silver Sable. That's cool. I should revisit these ongoing series that they had in the 90s of characters that people don't care about anymore, like Sleepwalker. Tales of Suspense, Wolverine, Wonder Man. I didn't read the Wonder Man solo series, and I don't know why. And X-Men Adventures, of course, based on the wildly popular cartoon that had just come out at this point. So here, Wolverine and Spider-Woman have to fight Tokamak and Decimator. So this is Tokamak, this is Decimator. They're talked about as heavy hitters here. Nowadays they would be classified as like D or Z-list characters, simply because the public doesn't really know who they are until they do something with them in movies or television and ruin them, right? So Wolverine takes on Decimator. At one point Wolverine says something about, while I slice you in half, and make 2 normal-sized people out of you because he's supposed to be like really big. And Spider-Woman fights... Oh, Tokamak. Here's a 2-page Flair commercial with no Blue Jays in it for baseball. So yeah, Ken gets no respect, eh? But anyway. And here, Spider-Woman's fighting Tokamak until Tokamak burns out and runs out of energy and isn't so incandescent anymore. And then she pins him with her weird webbing. This isn't the webbing that they showed before. This is some sort of like energy webbing or something. So yeah, Wolverine then defeats Decimator finally. So that's that. But they're in for a surprise, because are you ready for this reveal? This new character that's going to be a thorn in the side of the secret defenders? Dreadlox. Dreadlox, I don't know much about this villain, but she's coming onto the scene here, and they promise someone called Macabre coming up next. So yeah, so this is the big sting for the next issue. And this is typical of debuts in that, like, there'll be a big splash page with the character saying their name, but this issue won't be classified as the first appearance of Dreadlox. The next one will. I hate that. Here, they talk about Defenders and this new secret Defenders. At one point, they do reveal, I think this is Conway, right? Who wrote this? Sorry, Roy Thomas. So Roy Thomas is talking about how he wrote the original Defenders and he's writing the secret Defenders. His original roster was going to be Sabretooth, Punisher, Sleepwalker, and Spider-Woman. That's cool. I don't know why this wouldn't have worked. Maybe there's some continuity thing, or the editors were like, we want to push Darkhawk. We want to, put Wolverine who sells comics, like that kind of thing. They kept Spider-Woman from West Coast Avengers, but got this new team. The thing about Secret Defenders is it rotated, so after this story arc ends with issue 3 or 4, it goes on to other characters, and Punisher does turn up at one point, and Spider-Man does turn up on the team as well. This series lasted for 25 issues. It's a fun romp through 90s Marvel. Like Thanos is in it. At one point, Thanos makes his own Secret Defenders, which has all sorts of crazy characters, like Rhino's in it, and Titanium Man and stuff. So that's fun. It's like an anti-Secret Defenders. So this is a fun little series. I don't think that it's like hot on the back market, so you can collect all 25 issues and have fun reading about characters that are sort of forgotten nowadays from 90s Marvel, and a lot of fun stories that are a lot more clever than they really need to be. Here's the big sell for the subscriptions. Here is an ad for T2. Again, it's funny because they already had one, but now there's some more clear ad because it's on cardstock. So yeah, and also available on Gameboy. And here's the Game Genie commercial. I had a Game Genie for my NES. I don't think I have for Super Nintendo. They had one for Game Boy. Oh, I guess this is the one for Super Nintendo. I had the one for NES. It was a lot of fun. You could put in like random codes and do fun stuff with it. Strange and genius device. I think, and don't quote me on this, I think this is a Canadian invention. I'm not sure. Yes, I know, I think everything's Canadian, but it was fun. I mean, you could do that with cartridges. Not so much with today's games. But it was a neat idea. I know at one point they were sued by Nintendo and lost because a lot of other people were creating peripherals for their system that were unlicensed, but they were perfectly legal. And this was the same thing. Ingenious devices. Anyways, that is a look through Secret Defenders and a look through 1993 Marvel at the time. Hope you enjoyed this. Take care.